Hey guys, I'm the Nostalgia Kid. I remember it and you should too. Okay, so today I'm talking about the anime Corpse Party. That's right, the anime. Not the video game, but the anime that came out a handful of years ago, in, say 2014, 2015 kind of era. And, well, I'll be honest, it was kind of creepy. At least in my opinion. Now, I only say the anime Corpse Party is creepy because I have relatively low tolerance for what I consider creepy. And, well, what is Corpse Party about? Well, it's actually based, before I get into that, it's actually based on a video game series that came out in the late 80s, early 90s. And, well, the XGamer is actually editing this episode, so XGamer, edit yourself in explaining the whole history of this video game. Hey guys, X Gamer here. What is the video game Corpse Party? Basically, like the Nostalgia Kid just said, it takes place. The games came out in the late '80s, early '90s. Amazingly, it's actually gained a little bit of a cult following. I feel like it's almost like the Final Fantasy of like horror. I feel like I always struggle with that word, horror. Video games. And every handful of years, it winds up getting released on a new system. It's been on the Sega Genesis. Well, I want to say Sega Genesis, but I also know it was on the Super Nintendo. Then it was on the PlayStation 1. Then it made it to the PlayStation V Portable. Had a solid 10-year gap between systems, I want to say. Then it's been on the Vita. It's on the PS4. It was on the 3DS. I think they also recently, very recently, as of the recording of this video at least, they just announced another re-release. They've also done a number of sequels. I want to say a majority of the sequels actually are based more off of some of the re-releases that have come out over the years, rather than the original game. But at the same time, the most current releases, which to my knowledge was a 3DS game, which came out maybe 2016. Sorry for my weird faces. I If there's something we're missing, I'll put it up right here. Hey guys, so the whole reason I brought up the sequels being based off of the re-released game instead of the original game is just because over the years they have changed hands in terms of developers and publishers. So I really don't know what they changed in the re-releases over the original, and I also don't know what kind of decisions were made both in the studios and in the publishing companies to get these sequels done. So I don't know exactly how accurate they are to the original vision or if they line up at all. We lived on the PlayStation and Nintendo kind of systems mostly, but still, if you really want to play it, it's definitely out there. You definitely can do it. The biggest reason why I haven't done any kind of playthrough of it is there's actually 19 different endings. At least as of the 3DS release, which was the most current version. I believe there's a PS4 release, which is currently out, but I think it's just an HD version of the 3DS release. But yeah, like I said, there's 19 different endings. And so, for all I know, the ending I would get if I were to play it would be completely different than the ending you would get if you played it. This is a very true situation of that. And amazingly, it's not actually an RPG. It's more like I don't know, more like a visual novel, if that makes any sense. Like a choose your own adventure visual novel. That's the best way I would put this game. But still, the anime, from what I understand, kind of takes place during the worst case scenario timeline. So pretty much the worst possible ending you can get in the video game, I believe, what exists in the anime. But still, back to the Nostalgia Kid, so he can tell you all the details. Okay, thanks a lot, X Gamer, for editing yourself into this situation. Now, okay, now back to the premise. What is Corpse Party about? Basically, Corpse Party is about a group of friends in a high school, and they're all like graduating at the end of the year, I believe. It's been a while since I've actually seen the anime. I probably should have rewatched it, but it scares me, like I said. And it really left me in a very It really creeps me out. But yeah. So what is Corpse Party about? Basically, it's about a group of friends who are all graduating or moving on to different grades or moving on to different schools, and they decide at the one little party they have near the end of the year that one of them decides to do this one thing called a friendship ritual that they found online, where all of them tear off a piece of a paper doll, and they're supposed to hang on to it, and it's supposed to represent their friendship. But then they find out very quickly that it turns out this ritual is actually more like it's more like a curse to a degree, and they wind up getting stuck in like a hell and basically a hellish version of their school, and they have to find a way to escape this version of their school and get back home. And while they're doing that, they're being hunted down by ghosts and monsters, pretty much all the like evil and demonic entities that exist just beyond their comprehension of where their school is. And basically, they say in the very beginning of this series that there was an old school, there were a number of murders and teachers who were suspected of different things, and people who killed themselves. All basically just a whole cluster of different ghost stories that apparently were true. And the old school was torn down, and their new school is built in. So I guess you could say this is like that old school that they're wandering around in, if I'm making any sense at all. Personally, I feel like this is an interesting premise, and it really gave the anime just an excuse to explore some of the ghost stories that you hear talked about in Japanese culture, at least if you study Japanese culture. And or watch anime and you hear a character in there that maybe is into like, I don't know, demonic stuff or creepy stuff, kind of that one character who kind of exists and has a darker side and will talk about a random ghost story. So it kind of has an excuse to do a series about just ghost stories, even though there literally is an anime out there called Ghost Stories. But that has its own issues, and maybe I'll cover that another time. The biggest negative is you do have a lot of random tropes in this series. Like you have a little creepy girl who is obviously evil. You have some kind of serial killer who's wandering the halls. You have bloody, gory action. Well, not really action. You have random spirits who want vengeance or whatever, no matter who it is. And I don't know. I feel like it does get a little bit tropey, but still, it's like it is an interesting enough mystery as to like how they got here and how they need to get out, and it really does turn into a scramble and even a struggle for them to leave. Not to mention, this anime also implies that they're not the first group of kids who've been caught here, and even does show like how a lot of these like stories that they had heard about from around their school got started, and even some of the victims of some of those stories. It's very interesting to, I don't know, I consider it interesting that they're meeting like these victims, even though these same victims want to kill them now. Also, one big thing this anime really leans on is the goriness of it. You see people getting dismembered, disemboweled, disembodied, just everything. At very least, it tries to do it creatively for certain kills and certain characters, and that part is a little bit interesting to a degree. And it also is interesting a little bit later on that you find out there's a little bit of a puppet master kind of situation. And I don't know, I feel like that makes it almost like a Saw-like kind of situation, but even then, it just, I don't know, I feel like it's definitely creepy. It will definitely send chills down your spine. And if you're a horror fan, you're definitely going to love this. Also, one thing I very much enjoyed actually is the ending. Because amazingly, it doesn't end on like a positive note. It ends with like most of the characters dying. The ones who survived now have to go, are now obviously experiencing psychological trauma, and they can't even talk to anybody about it because anytime they brought up the names of like the friends who are no longer with them, all their family and friends can say is, "We don't even know who you're talking about." So that is a very like that, in my opinion, is really like what scares me. Just knowing that your friend died in like another hellish dimension and nobody can even remember who they are. Now, like I've already said, if you're a fan of horror, then you'll definitely love this. If anything, you'll think it's a little bit tame. If you're not, then I say it's worth watching. Maybe watch it in doses. If you're not used to scary stuff, maybe even watch it with a friend. And get terrified together. So that's my recommendation of this anime. If you want to watch something scary, spooky, definitely give this a try. Well, guys, that's everything I have to say about the anime Corpse Party. The Nostalgia Kid, I remember it, and you should too.